Hello, ladies and gents, boys and girls, people of all ages, sexualities, and identities, and welcome back to another movie review. Today's film/movie review is FlightPlan. Astonishing sort of film, a gripping, a dreadful, and a chill to the bone sort of film. A woman and her daughter from Berlin get on a flight. Her daughter goes with her, leaving Berlin, and essentially gets in a cab, and the pair of them head off to the airport. Whilst at the airport, she loses her daughter the first time, whilst her daughter wanders off and starts looking for sweets. After her daughter finds these sweets, her mum pulls her aside and then takes her on the plane. However, once the flight begins, it turns out that it's about to take a turn for the very worst. Every parent's worst nightmare, as Jodie Foster's character suddenly realises that her daughter is no longer with her. Marlene Wollston, who plays Julia, Jodie Foster's child in the movie, seems to have disappeared aboard a flight. But of course, a kid could never go missing on a flight, or could they? That is what Jodie Foster is about to find out. After reporting to a bunch of cabin crew that her daughter is missing, she at first stays rather calm. She asks them to begin to search the plane, and, to her knowledge, they do. But after finding no child, and not getting a proper head count of one of the air stewardesses, it turns out that the flight believes that this child was never on the plane in the first place, and that the mother is making it up all along. Especially after a call to apparently the check-in desk, it turns out that seat C26 was not boarded. Now this begins to make Jodie Foster go absolutely balmy. Can't blame her, of course, because child missing, who wouldn't go balmy? So she begins to search up and down the flight, and as the movie progresses, we find that her and the supposed air marshal find themselves in more than one tight spot. Jodie Foster even climbs into the bottom of the plane and essentially starts crawling around the hull looking for her daughter. Now, the first time when this happens, to no avail, she never seems to find the kid, because of course instead she finds the coffin of her late, great partner, who seems to have passed away. But then she starts to add it up. They try to play on her and start to play mental tricks with her when they bring a psychologist towards her and essentially try and manipulate her into believing that her daughter jumped off of a roof with her father. But if there's only one person in the coffin, and there isn't another coffin on board, where, in fact, is this missing child? If it's not truly dead, then the child still exists. Midway through the flight, of course, though, she recognises her taxi driver, and of course she tries to call him out. The taxi driver says this is a racist statement, all down to the part of him being an Arab, and of course you can naturally assume that the opinions on the plane become rather divided. Halfway through the story, when she goes to try and leg it halfway down the plane, he chucks her to the floor, and of course she passes out. This is linking into what we mentioned previously with the psychiatrist. But of course, even though he is very mad at her, he kind of, at the end of this story, begins to feel sorry for her when he learns the true tragedy of the story. As the plot continues and begins to thicken, it turns out that the flight marshal has blackmailed the captain into believing that Jodie Foster's mother character has essentially tried to blackmail the flight into believing that there is an invisible child just in order to try and get money out of them so that she doesn't blow up the plane. Elsewhere, the real child, who is thought to be lost, turns out to be sleeping down in the hull in a part that none of the cabin crew or anyone has checked. Well, Maybe not all the cabin crew. One person we know in the beginning of the film did indeed go down to the hole. But whether or not she saw the child or whether or not she cared that the child was down there is a whole other matter. Jodie Foster then jumps down back into the hole and saves her daughter from the flight marshal. After the pair of them escape after blowing up half of the plane with the flight marshal inside of it, we get an absolutely beautiful, stunning bit of lighting as we see Jodie Marshall and the child safe and sound walking out of the bottom of the airplane that didn't get blown up. The beautiful bit of lighting, personally to me, just is such a good bit of directing because it reminds me a lot of the scene in Aliens 2 where Ripley Scott is holding her child. I don't know whether this was intentional or not, but it is brilliant work from the directing team and everyone on the film. Now, the film ends with, of course, a lot of people opening their eyes to the fact that the child did exist and that the mother was not making it up the whole time, and the fact that her child went missing on the flight just proves how dangerous this situation was. Furthermore, I like the reactions from the kids who were asked, who did make a statement in the beginning of the film that they would go looking for her daughter because they believed the child existed. Now, to me, this is quite an irony because maybe the kids might have found him, maybe they might not have. But it is a chance in this film that you do think is funny that it's not taken, especially as it really adds to that paranoia and makes the mother even more agitated, the fact that nobody had believed her. Now, overall, Jodie Foster in this story is absolutely incredible. The guy who played the flight marshal, I've got to say, I felt he was very guilty in the beginning, especially his pieces of dialogue. One specific piece of dialogue, which I don't know whether it was done intentionally, but to me felt very suspicious, is when Jodie Foster wakes up from her sleep, and when her daughter's not next to her, the flight marshal essentially says the words, "Oh, it's not like in the air you can get up out of a in-flight movie." This to me was just very suspicious because what did you know and how comes you conveniently knew that someone had been watching an in-flight movie and wasn't in their seat? Now, of course, I did suspect along the way with this film, a lot of people, there were so many twists and turns that it was so hard to pinpoint who exactly was involved and who essentially uh, was the culprit. But in the end, as we know now, it was the flight marshal and one of the flight attendants. Now, the captain you feel sorry for, but don't. He comes across as a bit of an asshole in the beginning of the film, especially with the way that at first he is a very willing captain. He tries to help out the woman, but all of a sudden he makes his own opinion, and that makes him even more demonized in this story. The rest of the cabin crew make it even more obvious as the story progresses that they weren't really too bothered about finding the child, as Jodie Foster's character catches two of them either making out or, hanky panky. Uh, all well that ends well in this story, though, of course, because everything becomes right as rain in the end. A mother is reunited with her daughter, and they can go on with the rest of their lives. So now that we've got roughly most of the plot out of the way, let's get to the scoring cards. This is a very strong movie with very strong themes and very strong motives towards where it was going and what it was attempting to succeed in. And for that reason, I have to give FlightPlan a solid 10 out of 10. Thank you for watching. We will see you in the next movie review / film. Till then, stay beautiful, stay gorgeous. And goodbye for now, you beautiful people.